The morning sun cast long shadows across the glass towers of New Geneva Station as Ambassador Helen Carter walked through the diplomatic quarter. She had done this same walk every day for the past 8 years, greeting alien diplomats from 47 different worlds. The Galactic Council had become her second home, and she knew every corridor, every meeting room, every quiet corner where real negotiations happened. Helen paused at the observation deck and looked out at the massive space station that housed the Council. Ships from dozens of worlds docked at the outer rings. The sleek silver vessels belonged to the Alteri Republic. The massive angular ships were from the Krathok warrior clans. The elegant curved hulls marked the Harmony Collective's peaceful traders. And there, among all the others, were 3 small human ships that looked almost fragile compared to the alien giants. Another day of keeping the peace, Helen said to herself as she straightened her blue diplomatic uniform. The human delegation was small, but respected. Over the past 30 years since Earth joined the Council, humans had built a reputation as honest brokers and reliable partners. They were the ones other species called when they needed someone to mediate disputes or organize relief efforts. Captain Jake Morrison was having coffee in the mess hall of the New Horizons when his communications officer brought him the morning briefings. His ship was currently orbiting a newly discovered planet in the Kepler sector, conducting the standard surveys that had become routine over his 10-year career in the exploration service. "Anything interesting today, Captain?" asked Lisa Hayes as she joined him at the small table. His science officer was reviewing data from their planetary scans on her tablet. "The usual stuff," Jake replied. 3 more worlds to map in this system, then we head back to check on the Centauri colony's medical supplies." He sipped his coffee and looked out the viewport at the blue-green planet below. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to find something really exciting out here." Lisa laughed. "Be careful what you wish for. I like our quiet missions. No one shooting at us, no diplomatic crises, just good honest exploration and helping people who need it." Paul Bennett, their chief engineer, slid into the seat next to them. His uniform was stained with lubricant from the engine room, but he was grinning. "Just finished the monthly maintenance on the sensors. We're running at 105% efficiency. This old girl might not be the fastest ship in space, but she's reliable." The New Horizons was typical of human vessels. It carried a crew of 30 and was designed for long-range exploration and first contact missions. The ship had comfortable living quarters, advanced scientific equipment, and a well-stocked medical bay. What it did not have were heavy weapons or military armor. Like most human ships, it carried only basic defensive systems and a small security team. Jake looked at his crew and felt the familiar pride in their work. They were part of something bigger than themselves. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not through conquest or intimidation, but through service and cooperation. It was a good feeling. On the colony world of New Eden, Governor Linda Walsh was reviewing the monthly production reports with satisfaction. The agricultural colony had exceeded all expectations in its 5 years of operation. 50,000 colonists had built a thriving community that now supplied food to 6 different star systems. "The wheat harvest is up 15% from last season," reported her agricultural supervisor, Danny Kim. "And Dr. Rodriguez says the new medical center is treating patients from 12 different species now." Linda nodded as she walked through the main settlement. The buildings were simple but well built, designed to blend with the planet's natural environment. Children played in the parks while their parents worked in the fields or the processing centers. It was the kind of peaceful life that Earth's colonists had dreamed of when they first looked up at the stars. Dr. Kevin Rodriguez was finishing his rounds at the New Eden Medical Center when his assistant, Dr. Amy Chen, brought him the weekly patient statistics. The numbers told a story of success that went far beyond simple medicine. "We treated 43 different species this month," Amy reported. "The Vorthon delegation specifically requested our services for their trade negotiation injuries, and 3 Krathok warriors came in for surgery they could not get anywhere else." Kevin smiled as he looked through the medical bay windows at the mixed group of patients. A young Alteri was recovering from a rare genetic condition that only human medicine could treat. An elderly Harmony Collective member was learning to use a prosthetic limb designed by human engineers. A Krathok warrior was resting after surgery to repair damage from an old battle wound. "It's funny," Kevin said to Amy. "We came out here to help human colonists, but we ended up becoming the sector's general hospital. Nobody else seems to care about treating other species the way we do." Amy nodded. "The galactic medical establishment is too specialized. Each species only treats their own kind, but humans have always been good at adapting and helping others." Our reputation for helpfulness had spread throughout the sector. Human colonies were known as safe places where anyone could find food, medical care, or technical assistance. Human traders were trusted to deal fairly with all species. Human explorers were welcomed because they came in peace and left things better than they found them. Back on New Geneva Station, Helen Carter was meeting with the Alteri trade representative about a shipping dispute when her aide brought her an urgent message. She excused herself and read the brief report with growing concern. "Problems?" asked the Alteri diplomat. "Nothing we cannot handle," Helen replied, but her mind was already working on the implications. The report mentioned increased military activity in the Outer Rim territories. Some unknown force had attacked 3 minor colonies in the past month. The attacks were brutal and complete, leaving no survivors and no clues about who was responsible. Helen made a mental note to discuss the situation with Admiral Frank Cooper the next time she spoke with Earth. Frank had been her friend since their academy days, and he would want to know about any potential threats to human colonies. But for now, she had to focus on the immediate diplomatic challenges. The meeting with the Alteri continued for another hour, resulting in a successful resolution that would benefit both species. It was the kind of quiet victory that Helen had become known for. She did not make headlines or command battle fleets, but she kept the peace and built the relationships that made civilization possible. As the station's lights dimmed to simulate evening, Helen walked back to her quarters through corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy. They nodded respectfully as she passed. The human ambassador was known and trusted by everyone. 3 sectors away, Captain Morrison was preparing his ship for the jump to their next survey target when his communications officer received a general alert. Reports of attacks on Outer Rim colonies were becoming more frequent. The unknown attackers struck without warning and left no survivors. "Should we be worried about this, Captain?" asked Lisa as she reviewed the security briefing. Jake considered the question carefully. The New Horizons was an exploration vessel, not a warship. If they encountered serious trouble, their best option would be to run rather than fight. But the attack seemed to be concentrated in areas far from human space. "We'll keep our eyes open and report anything unusual," he decided. "But our job is exploration and aid, not military action. If there's a real threat out there, the Council will handle it." The galaxy continued its slow rotation through space, carrying billions of beings who had found ways to live and work together despite their differences. Humans had found their place in this vast community as the helpers, the mediators, the ones who could be counted on to do the right thing. None of them knew that their peaceful reputation was about to be tested in ways they had never imagined. The first reports came from the outer edge of Alteri space, where a small mining colony simply stopped responding to communications. When the Alteri Republic sent a patrol ship to investigate, they found empty buildings and scattered equipment. The 3,000 colonists had vanished without a trace, leaving behind no signs of struggle or evacuation. War Prime Vexthul stood on the command bridge of his flagship, watching as his warriors loaded the last of the captured slaves into the cargo holds. The mining colony had provided exactly what his people needed: workers for the expansion effort and raw materials for the war machine. The Alteri had been weak, just as intelligence reports suggested. Their peaceful nature made them easy prey. "How many did we take?" he asked his second-in-command, War Captain Nethvar. 2,700 workers, Nethvar reported. The rest chose to resist and were eliminated as examples. The mining equipment is being transferred to our vessels now. Vexthul nodded with satisfaction. The Joktar had spent centuries confined to their small cluster of worlds in the outer spiral arm, watching as other species expanded across the galaxy. But times had changed. Under his leadership, The supremacy had developed new weapons, new ships, and a new philosophy that would carry them to greatness. The Jactar believed that strength determined worth. Superior species deserved to rule over inferior ones. Those who could not defend themselves deserved to serve those who could. It was a simple truth that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten in their comfortable peace. On New Geneva Station, Ambassador Helen Carter was reading intelligence reports that made her stomach tighten with worry. 3 colonies had now disappeared in the past month. The pattern was always the same: complete communications blackout, followed by the discovery of empty settlements with clear signs of organized looting. The Harmony Collective lost another world yesterday, reported her intelligence aide, Captain Roy Mitchell. Same pattern. No survivors, no witnesses, all valuable equipment stripped away. Helen studied the star maps showing the attack locations. They formed a rough line moving inward from the galaxy's edge, suggesting a coordinated campaign rather than random raids. Any idea who's responsible? None of the major powers claim knowledge of these attacks, Roy replied. The Krathok deny involvement. Despite the military precision, the Vorthon Empire is dealing with their civil war and wouldn't waste resources on Outer Rim colonies. Everyone's pointing fingers, but nobody has answers. The Galactic Council had called emergency sessions to discuss the mysterious attacks, but the debates went nowhere. Each species was primarily concerned with protecting their own territory. The attacks seemed to target small, defenseless colonies, which made many council members assume they were safe. Their homeworlds had planetary defense systems and military fleets to protect them. Helen knew better. In her 30 years of diplomatic service, she had learned to recognize the signs of organized aggression. Someone was testing the galaxy's defenses, learning how different species responded to threats. The attacks were not random raids by pirates or desperate refugees. They were probing strikes by an enemy that was learning and adapting. Captain Jake Morrison was conducting a routine survey of an asteroid field when his communications officer picked up a distress signal. The transmission was weak and filled with static, but the universal emergency codes were clear enough. It's coming from the Kepler system, reported Lieutenant Ben Foster. Looks like a civilian transport in trouble. Jake ordered a course change immediately. The New Horizons might be an exploration vessel, but it was also part of the human tradition of helping anyone in distress. Within 6 hours, they found the source of the signal, a badly damaged freighter drifting near a gas giant. The ship was Harmony Collective design, but it had been modified with additional cargo space and passenger compartments. Scorch marks along the hull showed evidence of weapon impacts. Jake led a boarding party to investigate and found 43 survivors, crammed into the ship's emergency shelter. "Thank the ancestors you found us," said the ship's captain, an elderly Harmony Collective member named Veltar. "We thought we were going to die out here." Lisa Hayes was running medical scans on the survivors, while Paul Bennett worked to repair their ship's life support systems. The refugees were a mixed group from several species, all showing signs of exhaustion and malnutrition. "What happened to you?" Jake asked Veltar as they sat in the freighter's damaged mess hall. The alien's normally peaceful demeanor cracked as he described the attack. "We were evacuating civilians from Harmony Station when they came. Dozens of warships bigger than anything we had ever seen. They didn't try to communicate or negotiate, they just started shooting." Veltar's hands shook as he continued. "The station's shields lasted maybe 10 minutes, then they landed troops and started rounding people up. We managed to escape with these few, but 20,000 others were taken. The attackers were like nothing in the database. Tall, armored, with weapons that cut through our hulls like paper." Jake felt a chill as he listened to the description. The Harmony Collective was known for their advanced defensive technology. If their shields could only last 10 minutes against these attackers, then no civilian colony would be able to resist. "Did you get any recordings of the attack?" Lisa asked. "Anything that might help identify the attackers?" Veltar activated a small data pad with trembling fingers. The recording was brief and of poor quality, but it showed enough to be disturbing. The attacking ships were sleek and angular, painted in dark colors that made them hard to see against space. The few clear shots of the attackers themselves showed tall humanoid figures in powered armor, moving with military precision. They called themselves the Joktar Supremacy, Veltar said quietly. And they said this was just the beginning. The New Horizons escorted the refugee ship to the nearest safe port, but Jake could not shake the feeling that they had just witnessed something that would change everything. He filed a complete report with both the Exploration Service and Galactic Council intelligence, but he feared it would get lost in the bureaucracy like so many other warnings. On the Joktar flagship, War Prime Vexthul was reviewing reports from his commanders scattered across the Outer Rim. The expansion was proceeding ahead of schedule. 15 worlds had fallen to his forces in just 2 months, providing thousands of slaves and vast quantities of raw materials. The resistance has been pathetic, reported War Captain Zefkar from the recently conquered Alteri system. Their military doctrine is centuries out of date. They still think wars can be won with defensive positions and negotiated settlements. Vexthul smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The Joktar had evolved on a world where only the strong survived. While other species had grown soft in their comfortable civilizations, his people had remembered the fundamental truth of existence. Power was the only thing that mattered. What about the major powers, he asked. Any signs of organized response? The Vorthan Empire is still fighting their civil war, another commander reported. The Krathok clans are arguing among themselves about whether to intervene. The Galactic Council holds endless meetings but takes no action. They are exactly as weak as our intelligence predicted. The plan was working perfectly. For decades, Joktar infiltrators had studied the major galactic powers, learning their weaknesses and mapping their defenses. The galaxy had grown complacent in its long peace. Military budgets had been cut, defensive alliances had weakened, and most species had forgotten how to fight a real war. Begin Phase 2, Vexthul ordered. Target the secondary colonies of the major powers. Make them understand that distance will not protect them. Fear will accomplish what our weapons cannot. War Captain Nethvar brought up a holographic display showing the next targets. These colonies are better defended than the Outer Rim worlds. Some have planetary shields and garrison fleets. Good, Vexthul replied. Let them see how useless their defenses are against superior force. When their colonies burn, the major powers will finally understand that the galaxy has a new master. On New Geneva Station, Helen Carter was receiving increasingly desperate reports from across the galaxy. The mysterious attacks were spreading, growing bolder and more destructive. What had started as raids on isolated colonies was becoming a systematic campaign of conquest. The Galactic Council was finally taking the threat seriously, but their response was fragmented and ineffective. Each species wanted to protect their own territory first, leaving the outer worlds to fend for themselves. Military commanders argued about strategy while politicians debated jurisdiction. Helen knew that humanity would soon be forced to take sides in the growing conflict. Human colonies were scattered throughout the galaxy, many of them in regions where these attacks were spreading. The Terran Federation had always preferred diplomacy to warfare, but diplomacy only worked when both sides were willing to talk. As she looked out at the stars from her office window, Helen wondered if humanity's peaceful reputation would be enough to protect them from whatever was coming. The galaxy was about to discover that sometimes choosing peace was not enough to guarantee survival. The attack began at sunrise when most of New Eden's 50,000 colonists were still sleeping. Governor Linda Walsh was having her morning coffee in her office when the planetary defense sensors screamed their first and final warning. 50 Joktar warships had appeared in orbit without any advance notice, their dark hulls blocking out sections of the morning sky. Communications Officer Danny Green burst into her office without knocking. Governor, we're being jammed on all frequencies. I can't reach the defense stations or get a message off-world. Linda rushed to the command center where her small staff was struggling to understand what they were facing. The defense screens showed a massive alien fleet deploying, orbital bombardment platforms around their peaceful world. The largest ships were twice the size of anything in the human fleet, bristling with weapons that could reduce cities to ash. Get me Captain Morrison, Linda ordered, then remembered that the New Horizons was 3 days away in another system. Try to raise any human ships in the area. Send out emergency beacons on every frequency. A new voice cut through the static on the communication system. It was cold, mechanical, and spoke in heavily accented English. People of New Eden, I am War Commander Zefkar of the Jakhtar Supremacy. You will surrender immediately and prepare for relocation to work camps. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your colony. Linda looked at her staff and saw her own determination reflected in their faces. These were good people who had come to New Eden to build something better. They had families, children, dreams for the future. She could not simply hand them over to alien slavers. This is Governor Linda Walsh, she replied on the open channel. New Eden is a peaceful colony under the protection of the Terran Federation. We demand safe passage for our civilians and will defend ourselves if attacked. The aliens' laughter was harsh and grating. Your Federation is weak and far away. You have no defenses worth mentioning and no allies coming to save you. Surrender now and some of you may live to serve the Supremacy. Linda cut the communication and turned to her emergency coordinator, Major Steve Parker. How long to evacuate? The civilian population? We have 12 transport ships on the ground and 8 more we can recall from nearby systems, Steve replied. But it would take 2 days to evacuate everyone, and that's assuming the aliens give us time. Dr. Kevin Rodriguez arrived at the command center with his medical staff. The hospital has 300 patients who cannot be moved safely. We're setting up emergency medical stations in the underground shelters, but we need more time. Linda made the hardest decision of her life. Begin immediate evacuation of all non-essential personnel. Priority goes to families with children, the elderly, and medical cases that can be transported. Everyone else prepares for ground defense. The first orbital bombardment began 20 minutes later. Energy beams lanced down from the Jakhtar ships, targeting the colony's communication, arrays, power plants, and defensive installations. The small planetary shield generators overloaded within minutes, leaving the settlement defenseless against the assault from space. Dr. Amy Chen was helping evacuate the pediatric ward when the first blast hit the main hospital building. The explosion shattered windows and sent debris flying through the corridors. Emergency lighting flickered on as the main power grid failed. Get the children to the underground shelters, Kevin shouted over the noise of collapsing walls. Amy, help me with the surgical patients. They worked frantically to move critically injured patients to the emergency medical stations that had been set up in the colony's underground storage areas. The bombardment continued for 6 hours, systematically destroying everything that made New Eden a thriving community. Tom Bradley, the head of colony security, had organized the defense with 300 volunteers armed with hunting rifles and basic military equipment. They had never been intended to fight a real war, but they were determined to buy time for the evacuation. They're landing troops on the south side of the settlement, reported Lieutenant Carol White from her observation post. Looks like at least 1,000 soldiers in powered armor. Tom studied the tactical display and felt his heart sink. Jakhtar ground forces were professional soldiers equipped with advanced weapons and armor. His security team were farmers and technicians with basic training and obsolete equipment. It would not be much of a fight. We can't stop them, he told his team over the radio, but we can slow them down. Make them work for every building, every street. Give the transports more time to get our people out. The ground battle began at midday when Jakhtar soldiers reached the outer buildings of the settlement. Tom's people fought with desperate courage, using their knowledge of the local terrain to launch hit-and-run attacks against the advancing aliens. But courage was not enough against superior firepower and training. One by one, the human defensive positions fell. The aliens moved methodically through the settlement, killing anyone who resisted and capturing those who surrendered. They showed no mercy to civilians and seemed to enjoy the fear they created. Governor Walsh coordinated the defense from an underground command bunker while the evacuation continued above. Transport ships loaded with refugees lifted off every few minutes, racing to escape the system before the Jakhtar decided to pursue them. We've evacuated 37,000 people, reported Danny Green, but we're running out of ships and time. Linda watched the tactical display as red marks showed Jakhtar positions advancing through her colony. The aliens were taking their time, methodically searching every building for survivors and valuable equipment. They were not just conquering New Eden, they were harvesting it. Dr. Rodriguez was treating wounded civilians in the underground medical station when Jakhtar soldiers found the shelter. The aliens burst through the sealed doors with weapons ready, shouting orders in their harsh language. "These are medical patients," Kevin said as he stepped between the soldiers and his patients. "Under galactic law, medical facilities are protected." The alien commander backhanded him across the face, sending him sprawling. "Your laws mean nothing to the supremacy. You will come with us or die here." Amy helped Kevin to his feet as the soldiers began separating the wounded into groups. The aliens were deciding who was worth keeping as slaves and who should be eliminated as too much trouble. Captain Jake Morrison received the emergency signal while conducting a survey mission 3 star systems away. The automated distress beacon carried only basic information, but it was enough to make his blood run cold. New Eden was under attack by unknown forces requesting immediate assistance. "Set course for New Eden, maximum speed," he ordered. "Contact every human ship in the area and tell them to converge on our position." Lisa Hayes worked frantically at her communication station. "I'm getting responses from the cargo hauler Freedom's Call and the research vessel Discovery. They're both closer than we are, but still 2 days out." Jake stared at the navigation display showing their position relative to New Eden. Even at maximum speed, they would arrive too late to affect the outcome of the battle. The colony would fall long before any help could arrive. The final message from New Eden came 18 hours after the attack began. It was a brief transmission from one of the last evacuation ships as it escaped the system. "This is transport ship Mercy calling any human vessels. New Eden has fallen. The colony is destroyed and most of the population has been captured or killed. The attackers identify themselves as the Jakhtar Supremacy. We are carrying 4,000 survivors to the Centauri system. New Eden is lost." When Captain Morrison finally arrived at New Eden with his small task force, they found a world transformed. The once thriving agricultural colony was now a smoking ruin dotted with alien military installations. Jakhtar ships patrolled the system, while their ground forces established permanent bases in the settlement's remains. Jake stood on the bridge of the New Horizons and looked down at the world where 50,000 humans had built their dreams. The farms were burned, the buildings were destroyed, and the people were gone. It was humanity's first major loss to the Jakhtar Supremacy. But as Jake watched the alien ships moving in orbit below, he knew it would not be their last. The galaxy was about to learn that attacking humans came with consequences that no one had yet imagined. The news of New Eden's destruction reached Earth within hours of Captain Morrison's grim report. President Rachel Martinez stood in the Oval Office watching the recordings that Jake had managed to take from orbit. The burning settlements, the alien warships, and the scattered debris that had once been human homes painted a picture that changed everything. "How many did we lose?" she asked quietly. Secretary of Defense Robert Collins handed her the preliminary casualty report. 12,000 confirmed dead, 8,000 missing and presumed captured as slaves. 37,000 evacuated successfully, but most lost everything they owned. Rachel closed her eyes and thought about the families that had gone to New Eden seeking a better life. Teachers, farmers, doctors, engineers, children who would never see their parents again. The Jakhtar had not just attacked a colony. They had shattered the dreams of an entire community. "What's our military status?" she asked. "The defense fleet has been on peacekeeping duties for decades," Collins replied. "We have 43 ships, scattered across human space, mostly exploration vessels and cargo haulers with basic defensive systems. Against what hit New Eden, we might as well be throwing rocks." Rachel walked to the window and looked out at the peaceful gardens surrounding the government complex. For 30 years, humanity had chosen the path of peace and cooperation. They had built a reputation as the galaxy's helpers and mediators, but peace was only possible when all sides chose it. "Contact Admiral Frank Cooper," she ordered. "Tell him his retirement is over, and activate Project Minuteman immediately." Admiral Cooper had been tending his garden in Colorado when the call came. At 65, he had thought his military career was finished. The Terran Federation had not fought a real war since the colony rebellions 40 years ago, and most people assumed they never would again. "How bad is it?" he asked as he read the classified briefings in his secure communications room. "Worse than anything we've prepared for," replied General Susan Blake from the Pentagon. "The Jakhtar have military technology we've never seen before, and a willingness to use it without mercy. Our current fleet would last about 10 minutes against them." Frank studied the tactical analysis of the New Eden attack. The enemy ships were fast, heavily armed, and operated with professional military discipline. Their ground forces showed training and equipment that surpassed most galactic armies. This was not a ragtag band of pirates or desperate refugees. This was a military machine designed for conquest. "What about Project Minuteman?" he asked. "How much of it actually got built?" Susan smiled for the first time since the crisis began. More than most people realize, the military-industrial complex never really shut down after the colony wars. We just got very good at disguising it as civilian infrastructure. Within 72 hours of President Martinez's order, shipyards throughout human space began working around the clock. The cargo haulers and exploration vessels that the galaxy knew as harmless civilian craft were quickly recalled to military depots for emergency modifications. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, Governor Linda Walsh's sister, led a team of scientists at the Luna Research Station in retrofitting human technology for military purposes. She had spent years developing medical nanotechnology to treat diseases, but those same nanomachines could be weaponized with terrifying efficiency. "The beauty of human technology is its adaptability," she explained to her team as they worked on converting civilian systems. "A medical scanner can become a targeting system. Industrial mining lasers can cut through ship hulls. Even our agricultural satellites can be turned into orbital weapons platforms." The transformation was happening across human space. Mining ships were fitted with military-grade armor, and their industrial equipment converted into weapons. Medical vessels became mobile command centers with advanced sensor arrays. Even passenger liners were modified to carry troops and supplies for rapid deployment. Captain Morrison found himself in command of a ship he barely recognized. The New Horizons had been taken to the Titan shipyards and completely rebuilt in just 5 days. The peaceful exploration vessel was now the fast attack cruiser Retribution, armed with weapon systems that could destroy targets the size of small moons. "I can't believe they built all this in secret," said Lisa Hayes as she studied her new tactical control station. Her science officer position had been expanded to include weapons targeting and battle analysis systems that were more advanced than anything on Galactic Council warships. Paul Bennett was even more amazed by the engineering changes. "The reactor output is up 300%, and we have backup systems I didn't even know existed. This ship was designed for war from the beginning, but they disguised it as an explorer." Jake nodded as he walked through his transformed vessel. The comfortable quarters and scientific laboratories were still there, but hidden behind false walls were armories, tactical centers, and military command facilities. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment while pretending to be harmless. The crew was changing too. Lisa had completed advanced tactical training years ago as part of her officer certification, but she had never expected to use it. Paul's engineering background included military applications that he had studied but hoped never to need. Even the ship's cook, Sergeant Mary Johnson, turned out to be a former Special Forces operator who had been keeping her skills sharp. "How many of our people have military training?" Jake asked his new intelligence officer, Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner. "About 60% of the adult population," Alex replied. "It's been mandatory in schools for decades, disguised as physical education and emergency preparedness. Every colony has a militia that trains regularly for natural disasters. Every civilian ship has a crew that knows basic combat procedures. The galaxy had seen humans as peaceful because humans chose to be peaceful, but choice implied the ability to choose differently. Admiral Cooper established his headquarters on the military station Olympus, hidden in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The station had been built over 20 years and disguised as a mining operation, but it was actually the most advanced military facility in human space. Status report, he requested from his department heads as they gathered in the main briefing room. Fleet modernization is ahead of schedule, reported Admiral Kate Morgan, his naval commander. We'll have 200 combat-ready vessels within 2 weeks. The Jok'tar won't be expecting our cargo ships to fight back with battleship-class E weapons. Ground forces are mobilizing, added General Carl Peterson. Every colony has been organizing and training militia units for years. We can field 500,000 combat troops within a month, all with equipment they've been maintaining under the cover of civilian jobs. Intelligence assets are already in place, said Director Sarah Kim of Military Intelligence. We've been watching potential threats for decades. We know more about Jok'tar capabilities than they know about ours. Cooper studied the strategic displays showing human space and the advancing Jok'tar forces. The aliens had conquered 37 systems and were moving steadily toward the major population centers. They believed they were facing the same helpless species that had been running away for months. The Jok'tar think they understand us, Cooper said to his staff. They've seen our peaceful ships and helpful colonies, and they've decided we're weak. That misconception is about to become their biggest tactical error. Ambassador Helen Carter was having the most difficult conversation of her diplomatic career. The Galactic Council had called an emergency session to discuss humanity's sudden military mobilization, and many species were concerned about what they were seeing. The human fleet has increased in size by 500% in just 1 week, stated the Krathok representative. Your cargo vessels are now armed with weapons that exceed many military specifications. This transformation is suspicious. Helen looked around the council chamber at the representatives of 47 species who had known humans as peaceful traders and helpful mediators. Now they were seeing something that challenged everything they thought they knew. The Jok'tar murdered 12,000 of our people and enslaved 8,000 more, she replied calmly. They have declared war on every peaceful species in the galaxy. Humanity chooses to respond appropriately. But your military capabilities were hidden from the council, protested the Alteri delegate. How do we know you will not use these weapons against your allies? Helen stood and walked to the center of the chamber, where the holographic display showed the expanding zone of Jok'tar conquest. Red markers indicated destroyed worlds, while yellow markers showed colonies under attack. Because we choose not to, she said simply. For 30 years, humanity has had the ability to conquer any world in this chamber. We chose peace instead. We chose cooperation instead of domination. We chose to help rather than hurt. But when someone attacks our families, when someone enslaves our children, when someone destroys our homes, we also choose to fight back. The chamber was silent as the representatives considered her words. They were beginning to understand that humanity's greatest strength was not their hidden technology or their military preparations. It was their ability to choose their own path, even when that path led to war. The Battle of Kepler Station began when War Prime Vexthul decided to test humanity's new military reputation. The Joint Research Facility orbited a gas giant on the edge of human space, staffed by scientists from 12 different species. It seemed like an easy target that would send a clear message about Jok'tar power. Vexthul brought 60 of his best warships to crush what he expected would be another helpless colony. His intelligence reports described humans as recent converts to warfare, probably using outdated weapons and amateur tactics. The research station would fall within hours, providing more slaves and demonstrating that humanity's threats were empty. Begin the attack, he ordered from his flagship bridge. Show these humans what happens when inferior species pretend to be warriors. Admiral Frank Cooper had been waiting for this moment. 3 battle groups of human ships were positioned throughout the Kepler system, hidden behind asteroids and using advanced stealth technology that the Jok'tar had never encountered. When the alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace, they found themselves surrounded by enemies they could not see. All ships, this is Admiral Cooper, he broadcast on the tactical frequency. These aliens destroyed New Eden and murdered our people. Today we show them that humanity protects its friends and punishes its enemies. Begin the attack. Captain Jake Morrison led the first wave of human ships as they decloaked around the alien fleet. The Retribution and 12 other vessels appeared, seemingly from nowhere, their weapons already locked onto Jactar targets. The aliens had never faced this kind of coordinated ambush before. "Firing main batteries," reported Lisa Hayes from her tactical station. The ship's converted mining lasers lanced out with precision that surprised even her. The targeting systems were so advanced that they could hit specific sections of enemy ships from thousands of kilometers away. Paul Bennett watched his engineering displays with satisfaction as the ship's hybrid power systems delivered energy output that exceeded military specifications. "All weapons operating at full capacity, Captain. These aliens are about to learn what human engineering can really do." The Jactar fleet tried to respond to the surprise attack, but their rigid military doctrine had not prepared them for human tactics. While alien commanders waited for orders from their superiors, human ship captains were already adapting to changing battle conditions and supporting each other without formal coordination. War Captain Zefkar commanded the Jactar left wing when the human attack began. He watched in disbelief as his supposedly superior ships were outmaneuvered and outgunned by vessels that looked like converted cargo haulers. "How are they penetrating our shields?" he demanded from his weapons officer. The Jactar had spent centuries perfecting defensive technology that could stop any known weapon in the galaxy. "Their energy weapons operate on rotating frequencies," the officer replied. "Our shields cannot adapt fast enough to block them, and their projectile weapons are using materials we have never encountered." Zefkar realized with growing horror that the humans had not just converted civilian ships for military use. They had designed entirely new types of weapons, specifically to counter Jactar advantages. Every defensive system that had made his people unstoppable was useless against these strange new technologies. Admiral Cooper coordinated the battle from his command ship Washington, watching as human tactics proved devastatingly effective against Jactar formations. The aliens fought like they expected their enemies to stand still and exchange fire in formal battle lines. Human ships moved constantly, striking from unexpected angles and disappearing before the aliens could respond. "Second wave. Begin your attack run," he ordered. Another group of human vessels decloaked behind the alien fleet, catching them in a crossfire that shattered their formation completely. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner was analyzing enemy communications from his intelligence station. "Admiral, the Jactar are trying to retreat, but their command structure is breaking down. Individual ships are requesting permission to withdraw, but their flagship isn't responding." Cooper smiled grimly as he watched the tactical display. The Jactar flagship had been one of the first targets, its command systems disabled by precision strikes that left the crew alive but unable to coordinate their fleet. Without central leadership, the alien ships were fighting as individuals rather than a coordinated force. War Prime Vexthol stood in his damaged command center, watching his supposedly invincible fleet being systematically destroyed by an enemy he had underestimated completely. Half his ships were already destroyed or disabled, and the humans showed no signs of slowing their attack. "Send a surrender signal," he ordered his communications officer. "Request immediate ceasefire for negotiations." The human response came within minutes, broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship in both fleets could hear it. It was Admiral Cooper's voice, calm and professional but carrying an unmistakable edge of steel. "War Prime Vexthol, this is Admiral Cooper of the Terran Defense Fleet. You attacked our people without provocation. You murdered our civilians and enslaved our children. You declared war on humanity when you destroyed New Eden. We do not negotiate with those who wage war against innocence." The battle continued for another 2 hours as human ships methodically disabled or destroyed every Jactar vessel that refused to surrender individually. The aliens who did surrender found themselves treated according to galactic law, their crews imprisoned but not executed, their wounded given medical care. When the shooting finally stopped, 57 Jactar warships had been destroyed or captured. The human fleet had lost only 2 vessels, both due to collision damage rather than enemy fire. The mighty Jactar supremacy had suffered its first major defeat, and the outcome was so one-sided that it shocked the entire galaxy. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge looking at the wreckage of the alien fleet floating around Kepler Station. The research facility was undamaged, its multinational staff safe thanks to human intervention. But Jake knew this battle was about more than protecting one station. "Lisa, get me a communication channel to the Galactic Council," he ordered. "It's time the galaxy understood what just happened here." The broadcast reached every major world within hours. Video recordings of the battle showed human ships using tactics and weapons that military experts had never seen before. The peaceful species that had been running from the Zhaktar for months had turned and delivered a crushing defeat to their tormentors. On New Geneva Station, Ambassador Helen Carter addressed an emergency session of the Galactic Council while the battle footage played on screens throughout the chamber. Representatives from 47 species watched in stunned silence as human warships systematically dismantled a fleet that had seemed unstoppable. "The Zhaktar supremacy has learned today that humanity is not defenseless," Helen said to the assembled delegates. "We chose peace, but we were never helpless. We preferred cooperation, but we were always capable of war. The difference is that we fight only when we must, and only against those who choose to be our enemies." The Krathok representative spoke first when the footage ended. "Your military capabilities were hidden from this council. How do we know you will not use them against peaceful species?" Helen looked around the chamber at the faces of beings who had known humans as helpful mediators for 3 decades. "Because we choose not to. For 30 years, we have had the power to conquer any world represented in this chamber. We chose to help instead of hurt, to build instead of destroy, to protect instead of exploit. That choice has not changed." War Prime Vex Thul was brought before the Galactic Council in chains 1 week after his defeat. The proud warrior who had terrorized the Outer Rim now faced judgment for his crimes against peaceful civilizations. His empire had crumbled within days of the Battle of Kepler Station, with his remaining forces surrendering rather than face human retaliation. "The Zhaktar supremacy agrees to complete withdrawal from all conquered territories," Helen announced to the Council. "Reparations will be paid to all affected species, and all slaves will be returned immediately. War Prime Vex Thul will stand trial for crimes against galactic civilization." The former warlord looked at Helen with something like respect in his eyes. "You fight like warriors, but you show mercy like weaklings. I do not understand your species." Helen smiled sadly. "That is why you lost. You thought strength and mercy were opposites. Humanity learned long ago that true strength includes the power to choose mercy when it is deserved." The galaxy had been fundamentally changed by the Battle of Kepler Station. Species that had seemed helpless against Zhaktar aggression now knew that someone was willing and able to protect them. The peaceful humans had revealed themselves as the galaxy's most dangerous warriors, but only against those who chose to be enemies of peace. Admiral Cooper addressed the human fleet as they prepared to return to their normal duties. "Today we proved that choosing peace does not mean accepting defeat. We showed the galaxy that humanity defends the innocent and punishes the guilty. Remember this moment, but remember also that we fight so that others may live in peace." Ships began departing for their assigned stations, many returning to the exploration and aid missions that had defined humanity's role in the galaxy.